I struggled with my mental health while supporting my partner and her mom. After months of stress, she suddenly pulled away, leaving me shocked. I will attempt to keep this concise while providing sufficient context. I have been in a relationship with my partner for 5 years this year. We were somewhat friends before we began dating, as we were friends of friends. Our relationship was quite good. We rarely argued. From Christmas 2022 into 2023, she and her mother temporarily moved in with me due to their house sale closing, but their new home was not yet available. The decision was mine, despite my struggles with living with others. I became quite stressed during the months they stayed. My girlfriend and I both work. I have 3 children at home who are fairly self-sufficient and can take care of themselves, though I suppose I could say her mother looked after them while we worked. When I returned home from work, I prepared dinner for everyone every night. Her mother would often retreat to my bedroom. I ended up sleeping on the sofa. My girlfriend also shared the room with her mother, leaving me alone most nights. Fast forward a few months. They moved out, but I was still feeling quite anxious. I never communicated any of this to my girlfriend. Being a typical guy, I tend to bottle things up. I focused on an upcoming holiday in June that was supposed to be just the 2 of us, yet I found myself feeling stressed and anxious, as this would be my first holiday in a long time. We went to Amsterdam. My partner smokes, but I do not. I felt guilty for not visiting many cafes while there, but overall, we had a wonderful time. Moving ahead to August, everything I had been grappling with came pouring out. I hadn't spent much time with my girlfriend after our trip to Amsterdam because she went to Ibiza next, and then work got in the way. I experienced a severe mental breakdown, stopping my work, getting out of bed, etc. I ended our relationship, but immediately regretted it and sought to mend things. Instead, we decided to take a break. For me, it was difficult. This lasted roughly 3 months before we reconnected and chose to try again, taking things slowly. Things were progressing positively. We went on legitimate dates, doing the activities couples typically enjoy. However, these outings began to occur less frequently. Last year, I probably saw her once a month and twice if I was fortunate. We enjoyed a few more dates, including a concert for her favorite band, Kasabian, yet we were still scarcely seeing one another. At one point, I inquired whether her hesitance stemmed from a fear of repeating past mistakes. She explained that she still wanted to take things slowly, and I accepted that. Then came November of last year. I was unable to attend a friend's funeral, which hit me hard. I began taking my medications more consistently, lorazepam and occasionally codeine, and experienced a medication-induced breakdown. I was paranoid, anxious, and scared. I confided in my girlfriend, and she picked me up after work. I expressed everything I had been feeling. I told her I felt like she wasn't really my girlfriend anymore, and that I was hardly even a friend. I felt inadequate, not just as a boyfriend but also as a father. After calming down at her place, I attempted to lighten the mood by saying something funny, but I can't recall what it was. She then mentioned my crying and made a joke about it, not a light-hearted joke, but one that aimed to make me feel guilty. This occurred the night before she was scheduled to attend a rave with her friend, which was a common occurrence. I often felt stood up or let down in favor of this friend, but never said anything. She grew quite upset, feeling I was ruining her plans for the weekend, and told me she needed another break, also canceling our plans for a night out at the end of November, which I had booked 7 to 8 months beforehand. Things did not change significantly. We spent a few weeks communicating, and I eventually convinced her to join me for a night out. In my mind, we had an excellent evening. The following day was even better as we enjoyed a day of shopping together before returning home and spending more quality time together. We even sat down together and planned a holiday, and I booked the hotel and flights. It felt perfect. Then December arrived. We had still barely seen each other, but I didn't give it much thought. For the first time in years, I genuinely showed interest in Christmas. I decorated, which I usually left for her, and planned a wonderful Christmas day, even though I was aware she was coming over on Boxing Day. That day came. My gift to her was not appreciated, yet I thought little of it since we had agreed to choose something together later. She returned home the following day, and we arranged to spend New Year's Eve together. On New Year's Eve, we talked throughout the day. I ended up napping and missed a few messages, none of them significant. However, the last message indicated she would see her friend before coming over to mine. She sent me a few photos of them playing board games, and as the night progressed, there were no signs of her coming over. Meanwhile, I experienced an incident with my son and the police. Once that was resolved, I messaged her, jokingly stating I was stressed for obvious reasons, but could not wait to see her. Then, nothing. I fell asleep and awoke to a message stating she was anxious about coming over because she was unsure of my mood, and she felt she shouldn't be feeling that way. She mentioned needing to make substantial changes this year and required some time to think. So I allowed her that time. I didn't push her. I occasionally messaged to check if she was doing okay, trying to be as supportive as I could. Eventually, she began speaking to me in a more casual way again, flirtatious and lighthearted. This back and forth occurred sporadically over the subsequent weeks and months. I kept suggesting opportunities to meet and talk, but was consistently turned down or stood up at least 6 times. During this period, she continued visiting friends, particularly the previously mentioned one. She went to Amsterdam and just last weekend attended a comedy show alone because a friend couldn't make it. We had agreed to meet up the day after last Sunday. On Saturday, she informed me that she wasn't feeling well and was sick but still attended another friend's baby shower. Come Sunday, I asked how she was feeling. She replied that she was still unwell, so I suggested we talk over the phone or via messages. She declined. At this point, I hadn't seen her in 2 months. She had frequently canceled on me, citing mental health issues, yet she was fine attending events with others. Therefore, I refused to accept her refusal. I laid everything out for her. I took the blame, trying not to put pressure on her. I pleaded for her to talk with me so I could grasp what was happening, yet I indicated that it might be best for me to walk away since I clearly seemed to be the issue. She responded and essentially agreed, saying she didn't hate me or anything like that. Then came the pivotal message that prompted this. After giving her space, I woke up on Wednesday to a text stating that she did not want to talk, that she was ill and wished to speak in person. She claimed my behavior had caused her to pull away. I was genuinely taken aback, because I fully recognize my mental health issues and understand when I am doing something to hurt her. However, she is treating this as if it's a newfound discovery, as if everything from the past year was not problematic. I suppose I feel manipulated, as though I was merely there to support her whenever she needed uplifting or cheering up. I think if I hadn't sent that message, this situation would have dragged on indefinitely since we have a concert scheduled for July, which I booked in my name because I cover all expenses. Friends believe she might have been trying to hold out until then, but I am uncertain of how to feel. I love her and genuinely believed we would be together forever. Edit. Apologies for not keeping it brief. Story 2. I played my phone music at work, forgot past complaints, and my coworker's partner exploded over suggestive songs. What just happened? The title does not provide much context for the story, so let me offer some clarification. I recently began working at a new location of a fast food chain. After a few days on the job, they needed my assistance, and since I was available, I offered my help. This detail is somewhat significant because 2 employees in particular did not form favorable impressions of me when I went over to assist. I have an extensive and diverse taste in music, and the store provides a speaker that is available on a first-come, first-served basis. Some coworkers asked me to play some tunes, so I decided to put on my liked playlist from YouTube. This playlist contains a wide mix of thousands of songs across various genres. A considerable number of the songs I enjoy may contain explicit or suggestive content. I advised my coworkers to inform me if they felt uncomfortable with any of the music or simply did not like it, and I assured them that I would skip any song that bothered them. After a few suggestive tracks had played, a manager approached and informed me that the music could be heard in the lobby. I apologized and reduced the volume. About 30 minutes later, they came back and expressed their dislike for sexual content in the workplace. In response, I mentioned that sex is a natural part of life, laughed lightly, and changed the song. I continued to skip songs to demonstrate that I was listening to their concerns. However, they approached again and revealed they had experienced trauma related to sexual themes and did not want to hear any such music at all. I promptly acknowledged their feelings and switched to a much smaller, family-friendly playlist, as my intention was never to trigger anyone's anxiety. Fast forward about 6 months, and I began working there more consistently. I must admit that I completely forgot about that person's strong aversion to certain types of music, and the situation sort of repeated itself, though without my previous laughter about the naturalness of sex. Now, I felt I had made two poor impressions on this individual, and aimed to limit my interactions with them to simply fulfilling their requests while only playing family-friendly music. They made it somewhat clear that they disliked me, and I understood their perspective. I recognized that I had presented a negative impression. Although it remains a professional environment, I agree that while music audible beyond the kitchen should be lowered, or at least kept appropriate, treating coworkers with respect is also crucial. Today, a fellow kitchen worker, who happens to be dating the person with whom I've had these negative interactions, took the store speaker to the dish pit to play his music. After a while, I felt time dragging and decided to play some music through my phone at a low volume enough for me to hear, but not loud enough to overpower his music. Approximately an hour later, he turned to me and asked if I was playing music on my phone. I confirmed this and said he could continue using the speaker if he preferred. He turned away, muttering something under his breath. At this point, I started to feel anxious because I thought I heard him say something like, "If you really need it that much." I had assumed he was just speaking to himself while focusing on his dishes. However, less than 2 minutes later, he turned back and aggressively asked if I knew what his first impression of me was. I replied that I was somewhat aware, since it felt awkward for me to recognize my previous behavior. He then began to state, "My partner told you that sexual music wasn't welcome in the store." After he paused, I responded with, "Yeah." He continued, saying, "And then you told them sex is natural." I replied with, "Yeah." And then he exclaimed, "What is wrong with you?" At this moment, it seemed to me that he was intent on expressing his disdain for me, prompting me to ask, "I'm sorry, are you trying to say something?" To me. He repeated essentially the same thing 3 more times without providing clarification on what he wanted to communicate, leaving me confused about his sudden anger. He stormed off, saying, "There's no way you're this oblivious." I was left shaken, as I do not handle confrontations well. Shortly after he left, his partner hurried over to me, apologizing and stating, "I'm so sorry nobody communicated this to you, but we do not listen to music on our phones at all here, none in the back, none in the kitchen." They then quickly walked back to the front. I was taken aback but quickly turned off my music and continued working in silence. As a side note, I am currently 6 months pregnant, and the hormones often lead me to cry at the slightest provocation. Typically, I manage to contain my emotions until I'm alone because I do not want my feelings to make others uncomfortable, especially when I would usually handle the situation more calmly. I requested to speak with them privately about what had just occurred, explaining that I found it somewhat confusing. We went to the back, and I cautioned them to disregard my tears because I desperately needed to discuss the situation without focusing on my unpredictable emotional responses. I began by stating my confusion about the abrupt escalation of anger from their boyfriend, followed by their immediate insistence that I turn off my music. I shared that it caught me off guard and expressed my preference for clearer communication regarding any necessary changes in my behavior in the future, ideally conveyed in a calmer manner. I requested that their partner address any complaints with me before reaching such a high level of anger. Their response was to assert that it is common sense not to play suggestive songs at work. I retorted that I always comply when asked to change the music or lower the volume if it is too loud. They expressed a desire to see me behave more like a manager and less like a typical crew member. I acknowledged their point, but noted that I was still learning the rules of this store, as they significantly differ from my previous job. They insisted that it is common knowledge, to which I replied that it was not common knowledge for me because I had not been employed there for as long as they had. They then mentioned that while they did apologize for their partner's behavior, he simply did not view me as a manager because I needed to take charge more. Throughout the conversation, they appeared visibly irritated, concluding by informing me, "Look, both my boyfriend and I are autistic and have ADHD, so we become overstimulated with multiple types of music playing simultaneously." I acknowledged that I could understand that position, but I reiterated the need for earlier communication instead of anger, to which they responded, "Try using your brain instead." I am still somewhat shocked by the experience, as I understand that excessive sound can be overwhelming, but my music was quite muffled. I could barely hear it when I stood away from his music, and the song I played was neither sexual nor suggestive. Additionally, I share similar neurodivergence. This situation is confusing to process, and I would like to know if I am at fault for what transpired today. It almost feels as though they both wanted to communicate their disdain for me without directly saying it. I appreciate any feedback you may have. Edit. Many have pointed out that I am not the only individual who plays suggestive or explicit music. The couple is friends with another worker who frequently plays the song, "I Wanna F You Like an Animal." Therefore, it seems that we either have fundamentally different personalities, or they simply dislike my approach of not slowly opening up to people in a normal manner. I specifically inquired if I was at fault for today's situation, sharing only the relevant information regarding our interaction. Story 3. Aita, what should I, M20, do about an unplanned hookup with my BFFs, M20, cousin F20? Summary. Essentially, a casual encounter turned out to be significant. I connected with my best friend's cousin, which led to some complications. After I confessed to my best friend about the encounter, her first cousin learned about it and became aggressive, spreading false information to make me doubt my feelings for her. He even insisted I not inform her, which I respected. Should I attempt to reach out to her through my best friend, who can verify what her cousin said? Additionally, I received a call from her first cousin, who was hostile. He accused her of inappropriate behavior with other guys, but I struggle to accept his claims as they contradict my experience with her. Our encounter was genuine and meaningful to me. However, after my interaction with him, I ended up blocked on all her social media accounts. As I am considering how to handle this situation, I ponder whether she should know the truth about what he said. I want to reconcile with her because our connection felt strong. After 2 weeks of conversing with my best friend's cousin, I visited her at work after her sister encouraged me to come by. The visit went well, despite our nervousness. A week later, she invited me over for a movie night at her apartment. I arrived late on a weekend and was welcomed by her 2 younger cousins who were not expected to be there. We ended up smoking and chatting casually, and I sensed they appreciated my presence. Although my cousin, F20, and I felt a bit awkward, we made small talk that revealed common interests and beliefs. Eventually, as the hour grew late, she sent everyone to bed around 2 a.m. At this point, I wasn't anticipating a hookup because I genuinely liked her and wanted to respect her Christian values. However, as the evening progressed, we made our way to the bedroom. Flirting and compliments ensued, and eventually we ended up sleeping together. The experience was unparalleled, lasting for about 3 hours with 3 broken condoms. She informed me that I was her second partner and that she wasn't on any birth control. I had never felt such a strong connection with someone before, and I knew I couldn't afford to jeopardize it. I left her place at 5:30 a.m., feeling exhilarated. Our Snapchats suggested we both enjoyed the encounter and wanted to meet again, but I desired to move beyond just physical intimacy because I felt our bond could not solely revolve around that. After a couple of days, I excitedly informed my best friend about the experience, eager to gauge his reaction. Although he and she are second cousins and not particularly close, they still share familial ties. I also regard my best friend as a brother. We grew up together, and people often confused our names because of our similar lifestyles and appearances. Was it disrespectful to share this revelation without consulting her first? Would it have been better to withhold this from him? It turns out she mentioned to her friends that we had spent time together, which led to her first cousin, M19, discovering that we had engaged in something more. Her first cousin is still in high school and is also a cousin of my best friend. They have a light-hearted relationship as cousins, having grown up together like siblings. My best friend is aware of their sometimes playful interactions and the eccentricities of their family dynamics. I usually play Xbox with my best friend, which was where I disclosed what had occurred. During that conversation, my best friend revealed to the first cousin that we had sexual relations, likely in a joking manner. To him, this might have seemed like I was bragging about my experience, but it genuinely brought me joy and was a meaningful happening that I wanted to share. Unfortunately, the first cousin didn't appreciate my perspective and labeled me a kiss and teller. When I later engaged in a conversation with her first cousin, I was bombarded with insults, accusing her of being promiscuous. He made disparaging and unfounded claims about her character, stating that she had been with multiple guys and referred to her appearance in an unflattering manner. All of this made me question her loyalty, despite not wanting to believe it. His statements were inconsistent with my experience, which I found to be sincere. He expressed indifference about our encounter, while simultaneously attempting to undermine her attractiveness and worth. The conversation escalated to aggression, as he threatened me if I made any smart remarks when we eventually crossed paths. I was confused about his hostility, considering his initial indifference towards our encounter. Eventually, he left the Xbox party but returned with another guy she is talking to. I chose to ignore it but couldn't help teasing them, which seemed to highlight his insecurities. I believe this is where I made a mistake. When the other guy joined the Xbox party, they made lewd remarks about her, which led me to discuss our encounter, feeling heavily disrespected at that moment. He hypocritically expressed that it was inappropriate to talk about her in such a way. Their behavior struck me as childish and insecure. His aggression continued to escalate, culminating in a threat to harm me if we ever met. During our conversation, I expressed my discontent about him eavesdropping on our intimate moments, but I still hadn't grasped the depth of their relationship, as she hadn't mentioned him when we first connected. Now, I find myself dealing with a very angry friend, and I'm uncertain about the next steps. I left the situation unresolved, avoiding any mention of my conversation with her first cousin over Snapchat. No significant developments occurred in the following days, and our conversations remained light-hearted. However, I was also in the process of quitting weed and started experiencing symptoms of cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, which heightened my anxiety concerning her. I suspect she noticed my distress as the tone of our interactions became shorter. I believe this may have prompted her to reach out to him about our situation. The most crucial moment arrived when she went to visit his house since they are family. I received an unexpected call from her around 9:00 p.m., only to realize her first cousin was on the other end. He was aggressive, and at first, I struggled to find my voice, incredulous about the situation. The conversation quickly devolved into mutual insults, with her cousin dominating the discourse while she remained silent. I finally confronted him, asking how he could call her a whore and accuse her of being involved with multiple guys. He outright denied it when confronted. Clearly, she must be trusting his word over mine. This episode concluded with me being blocked on all her social media accounts, likely because he had her phone during the call. Enraged, I rushed to my best friend, explaining what had transpired, feeling utterly wronged in a way I had never imagined possible. I informed my best friend about everything, and we attempted to confirm who participated in the conversation that took place between me and her first cousin. My best friend admitted that he suspected the cousin was lying, noting that he would not have denied it if she was present. Additionally, the first cousin instructed me not to reveal what he had said, and I failed to tell her, fearing it would breach her trust. Given how close they are, I feel obligated to ensure she knows the truth. Should I expose her first cousin to her, utilizing my best friend's position as her second cousin and a witness to what was said? Or should I let this go? I refuse to back down without a fight. This girl deserves better. Lastly, it's worth mentioning that her and her cousin's upbringing involved parental issues and absent fathers. Please share your thoughts. Does she need to know specifically what he said to me? Story 4. I, 20F, had a falling out with my 20F best friend due to irreconcilable differences, but we have to continue being roommates for 2 months. How do we function together now as roommates and not friends? I, 20-year-old female, have been close friends with, let us call her, Kuitney, 20-year-old female, since the first semester of our freshman year in college. We were not particularly close initially, but we developed a bond over our shared desire to be petty towards people who had abandoned us within a larger friend group. At that time, I was in a very dark place. It was a new environment for me. I felt completely disconnected and alone, and I was experiencing numerous mental health crises. Kuitney was in a similar situation. We both became support systems for one another and helped each other through challenging times. Over time, we introduced Selena, 19-year-old female, to the group. there was a noticeable change in our dynamic, as the two of them began living together and repeatedly left me out of their activities, creating a duo within our trio. Eventually, I received the help I needed over the summer following my freshman year. I worked extensively on my self-confidence, mental health, and emotional maturity. That summer, it was also agreed upon that Kuitni, I, and two of our less close friends would move into a 2-bedroom apartment just off campus, with Kuitni and I sharing a room. Initially, everything felt perfect. We all went on adventures together, even attending a 2-day music festival, and it felt as though we were the closest people on Earth. However, right after winter break, everything changed. Suddenly, I found myself being excluded by Kuitni and Selena, who went behind my back and lied to me about even the most trivial matters. It felt as if I had lost my friends. Eventually, Kuitni and I had a conversation, during which she admitted that she allowed small issues, which could have been resolved sooner, to build up to a breaking point. She also expressed her intention to improve both her communication with me and our other roommates, and to establish her boundaries more firmly. One issue she mentioned was that she felt frustrated by people crossing personal boundaries that she had never communicated to anyone. This conversation felt productive, and for about a week and a half, everything seemed fine. Kuitni was openly communicating her needs and discussing matters that bothered her. However, she eventually reverted to her previous behavior, which became even worse than before. Kuitni and Selena began to gossip about others behind their backs while pretending to be friends with them, particularly regarding my girlfriend, 20-year-old female. Selena had also done this on numerous occasions, including with her then sorority sisters, one of our roommates, and even her ex-roommate from freshman year. Initially, I let it slide because I did not want to create tension with her and assumed she was merely venting her frustrations. However, it became increasingly evident that her behavior was mean-spirited and immature, leading me to consistently advocate for the individuals she was disparaging. This was always met with defensiveness and denial of any wrongdoing. Additionally, Selena is frequently in a negative mindset. While I will not detail her struggles, she has had a very challenging relationship with her mental health. However, her comments about possibly harming herself have raised concerns, especially when she makes these remarks in a non-joking manner. I have repeatedly tried to lift her spirits or encourage her to seek help, but those efforts have also been met with defensiveness and denial. Kuitni has started exhibiting similar behavior. The situation came to a climax one Saturday when both Selena and Kuitni lied about their plans after making the same arrangements with me. They canceled our plans, stating they were having a night in separately, only to continue with those plans without me. Naturally, I broke down because I could not comprehend why they had acted that way and decided to sleep in my girlfriend's dorm for the night. When I returned home, Kuitni confronted me and immediately criticized my lack of kindness or empathy over the past 2 weeks. This accusation came after several weeks of her not communicating with me at all when I had asked, "What happened?" regarding her frustrations and anxieties. I believe this accusation is unfair, as I have supported her in many ways, from attending all her show productions to taking her to the hospital, and even calling her mother at 2 a.m., she proceeded to engage in an immature argument with me, claiming that by asking her basic questions to start conversations, I was prying into her life, particularly when I would ask, "What are you up to today?" to avoid detailing the entire conversation. It ended with her refusing to acknowledge her own issues and instead trying to control my actions, something my therapist and support system agreed with. I had reached my limit with this conversation, and when Selena asked me to essentially repeat it, I simply said no. I am exhausted from always accommodating their needs without any reciprocity for mine, and this has been a long time coming. Kuitni has continued to behave immaturely since our conversation ended, avoiding our apartment, angrily storming out of the room, complaining about my sleep schedule. I go to bed at 10 p.m. to maintain a normal routine, while she stays up until 4 a.m. and keeps me awake, and even speaking behind my back to both Selena and her other friends, as well as our roommates. Our other roommates feel that this situation is creating a toxic environment in our apartment and that it needs to be resolved, especially since we have 2 months left of living together. How can I navigate being roommates with Kuitni now that our friendship has deteriorated? Summary. My friend and I have had a falling out, and she is behaving very immaturely about it. As we are also roommates for 2 more months, what can I do to be a fair roommate now that we are no longer friends?